Nicole here. I don't know what day you're watching this, but for me, it's Halloween. And what that means is that you're going to have to watch me read in costume because I love Halloween. Anyway, today we're here to read from my brand new book that just came out today, All's Fair in Past and Present. And what I'm going to be doing is reading you the prologue chapter plus a little bit of chapter one. The prologue chapter sets up Niles' backstory a little bit. If you remember from the first book, he was in foster care together with Ari, so this gives you a little hint on how they got there. Plus, you'll be able to enter into the more lighthearted side of Niles' wonderful snarkasm. Now, if you haven't read book one, you can still read book two and completely enjoy it. However, book two does spoil book one, like completely. Like if you wanted to get to that surprise ending in book one and you read book two first, too bad, so sad for you. Anyway, I'm excited to read. Are you excited to read? I have a cough, so I'm probably going to cut this video like 8 million times, but let's get started. Niles stared at his mother as if waiting for her to fall from the high, slender rope of a trapeze. His teeth clenched, his eyes rounded, and his child's heart thumped like a rabbit's. She didn't know he was looking, and that was the only reason he could. It was much darker in his room than it was in the cramped kitchen where she sat like a stone. Niles and Trey's only window faced the faded brick wall of the building next door, its 8 stories blocking their view of the summer sunset and keeping Niles hidden in the doorway's blackened shadow. He knew that wasn't what made the biggest difference between their spaces, though. It was the 2 bright light bulbs that hung over his mother's head. Landlady Kira put in the highest voltage possible, the kind that hurt to look at, all because they made it impossible to hide anything from her mean, graying eyes. Tiny cracks in the tiles, chips on the stovetop, little indents in the wall from when Niles or Trey knocked into it a little too hard. They were always knocking into something or other, running around, making their mom crazy. But she wasn't crazy just then. She was crying. Niles peered into the long line of light between the open bedroom door and its badly painted frame, snooping even though he knew he shouldn't. His brother, his biggest protector, was deep asleep in their shared bed a few feet behind him after another hard day at school, leaving Niles to brave the moment alone. He snatched a glance over his shoulder at his brother's relaxed face, jealous of the peaceful dreams he saw there. He wished Trey would wake up and feel the truth of reality instead, the tension of it, the crackle of static in the air, the unlikable thrill you got when you were doing something you weren't supposed to. Niles hated doing things alone, especially now. He was counting down the days to his brother's abandonment. Trey was going into middle school in the fall, leaving Niles to fend for himself in 2nd grade all alone. Pessimist that he was, he knew it was only a matter of time till the bullies attacked. Once he had no big brother to fight his fights for him, it was an open invitation for the soon-to-be 4th graders to pounce. They were getting ready for it, giving Niles nasty grins when his brother couldn't see. He felt a pit of horrible tightness under his lungs every time he went to school now. It made him want to stay home safe under his covers. His mama called the feeling dread. Fear, but not the kind you had for what's happening today. It was fear for the things that were coming tomorrow. Dread was exactly what Niles felt right then. His mother looked exhausted, the blinding lights making her tears track dark marks down her brown skin. One of her hands was tucked deep into her puff of tight black curls, clutching at them so hard her knuckles went pale. She was shaking. The water glass made clinking sounds against her wedding ring as she lifted it to her mouth, then took it down, then lifted, then down again. She never actually took a single sip. Her voice was low and small as she whispered, "I don't want to do this." Her back to Niles, their social worker leaned over the kitchen table and clasped her hands together. "I know you don't." His mother glanced up and Niles pulled back, taking shelter farther behind the door. He peered into their small living room and noticed his mom's bed was pulled out from the sofa. It was a mess of unmade blankets, and her sneakers were half under the mattress frame. She must have been too tired to put them by the door. It caught Niles' attention in a strange way. Mama was always so bossy about keeping the shoes by the door. I'm trying. Can't you tell them I'm trying? His mother said, hanging her head and shaking it back and forth. Ever since James died, all I've been trying to do is get us on our feet. But who wants an Omega clogging up their payroll with her heat leaves and her mother's hours when they can have a full-time beta? All I have is my hands, Lou. I don't have degrees or sponsors or hell, even boyfriends. I've got no one but those two little boys, and I'll be damned if they're going to take them, Deidre. If you try to fight, you'll lose, and it will make more of a financial mess than you can afford to clean up. Why is this happening? His mother said, her voice a whimper. Mrs. Klein. His mother's face went narrow-eyed with anger, even as her mouth pulled up at the corners. Mrs. fucking Klein. Yes, Mrs. fucking Klein, the social worker agreed. She said Trey was eating out of the garbage. It's a goddamn lie, and you know it. I know, Dee, I do. But she hates you. She hates your kids, and it doesn't matter how many people I tell about it. She's biased and terrible, and everything she's doing is wrong, wrong, wrong. But all people see is that Niles has less than a week's worth of clothes, that I keep neat and clean, and that the boys are skinny. Of course they're skinny. Have you seen half the kids in their class? They're rail thin, all of them, and my boys are the tallest in their grades. And they also know you're getting evicted. Niles's mother froze, her full lips parting slightly. Her lashes seemed to sparkle with the tears puddling in her eyes. How would they know that? The social worker shrugged. We've got two young kids. Maybe they said something? Niles' stomach dropped. He had said something. He asked for Jeremy's mom's phone number so they could still be friends if he had to change schools. Jeremy had asked why. And you don't have housing lined up, do you, Dee? Where are you going to stay, the car? His mother grabbed the cup again, and this time she did drink, a big gulp that made her throat work. It's about to be summer, the social worker said, digging into a bag stashed under her chair and taking out paperwork. The kids are going to be out of school, and you have no one to keep them with. Tessa, his mother started, has already told you she won't take them again. How are you going to get a job with them around, huh? Ask the kids to sit in the lobby while you do interviews? Make them hang out at the park all by themselves while you actually manage to get on the schedule somewhere? His mother's shoulders curled in as if she was shrinking. She let out the terrible, soft sounds of sniffles and sad hiccups. I understand. The social worker tried to take his mother's hand, but she pulled away. No, you don't. There was a pause and a deep sigh as Niles stared at the social worker's back. Her shirt had little flowers printed on it, but that bright kitchen light washed them out until it seemed like there was no color at all. You're right, I don't. But you need to make a decision. Do you want a better life for your children? Do you want food in their bellies and clothes on their backs? Because if you do, then you let them go. That horrible twist of his gut owned Niles as he tried his best to stay quiet. Mama, please don't let them take us. Fight. Fight and bite and never let us go. But she did none of those things. Instead, his mother squinted at the white glare shining down from the ceiling, her arms wrapping around herself. Do you promise not to separate them? Niles recoiled, head swimming. The social worker flipped open her papers and turned one towards his mom with a pen in her hand. I'll see what I can do. Stumbling back from the doorway as silently as he could, Niles watched the world get blurry as his tears fell. He wanted to scream, but his voice wouldn't work. He didn't have enough air, no matter how fast he breathed. Sheer panic set electric fire under his dark skin. It wasn't just his brother who was leaving him behind. It was everyone. That was the past. Now we enter into the first section of the present. Chapter 2. Chance Meeting. Niles sighs and peeks at his phone, checking the time as he stands in line at a swanky, pricey coffee shop, its fancy swivel chairs in vintage colors more decorative than useful. He drew the short straw at work today and, lo, was sent off to brave Boston's fluffy snowflakes on a never-ending quest to save the office from the Java junk management stocks in their little kitchen. That shit is like waxing your insides with every scalding hot swallow. He flicks his round, earth-colored eyes to the window and purses his full lips. Niles takes in the gentle fall of snow with all the patience of a woman in a long line with a small bladder, tapping his foot irritably and missing the fall season with his whole heart. It may or may not be exacerbated by the fact that he can no longer get pumpkin-spiced anything, but that's a fact he'll tuck away into his heart and admit to no one. "Excuse me," someone murmurs, and a man reaches over to grab some swizzle sticks perched with their kin to Niles's right. Niles glances at him so casually he doesn't even see him, until the man keeps his proximity and stares a little too hard. "Oh, excuse me," the man says again. Upon second glance, he's not bad looking. Large, strong, blonder and more blue-eyed than Niles likes, but not terrible. Niles takes a quick, shallow breath through his nose to get a sense of the stranger. Despite his size, he's a beta. Niles lifts his eyebrows. "You're excused?" "Sorry, that came out wrong." The man huffs a chuckle and points his nose directly at his shoes. This might be a bit forward of me." "Then I suggest you don't do it," Niles thinks mildly. "But you don't happen to be an Omega, do you?" Niles's eyes are like a planet in orbit, rolling around in their fullest circumference. How a beta could tell what his designation is, he has no idea. It's not like the man could smell it on him. A beta's senses don't work that way. He's not wrong, though. It's annoying. Male Omegas are rare in the best of times, but Niles is a true miracle. A tall, black, gay male Omega. Looking for one of him is beyond a needle in a haystack. It's a single bubble in an Olympic-sized swimming pool of champagne. It gets him noticed by every alpha male, even the straight ones, just for being the sheer anomaly he is. "How did you guess?" Niles says, a tiny sarcastic tick of the side of his mouth, saying all he'd like to on the matter. "Sorry," the man continues. "It's just, well, you're really pretty." Pretty. Oof, he hates that word. "Handsome, you mean?" The man fumbles his words this time, getting pink in the cheeks. Yes, sorry, handsome. All the Omegas I know are stunning." Well, that was the nicest thing anyone has said to him all day. "Plus, you smell amazing." It must be his new cologne. There was a commercial that snagged his brain on a hook. A gorgeous, live man swam with an untamed horse in the ocean before transforming into a centaur. An ad spot which was somehow intended to sell perfume, mind you. And against all odds, it was effective as hell. Niles bought 2 bottles on day 1 and now dabs it on himself religiously. That plus his scent blockers are supposed to hide his Omega designation and keep the unwashed males at bay. "Thanks," Niles says, not exactly unused to people coming on to him so strong. "What can I say? We Omegas have a thing about scents." The beta male blushes harder and shifts back and forth from one foot to the other, a shy smile thinning his curled lips. "What do I smell like?" Ugh, why do betas always have to play this game? It's like they expect you to taste test every frigging note in the air, asking things like, "Oh, do I smell like chrysanthemums dipped in chocolate with a droplet of barbecue sauce and a smidge of dirt?" Or other weird mixes no one's ever smelled before. "Next, please," a barista calls from behind the counter, luckily too caught up in our hard day's work to notice Niles's painful encounter. "That's me." He raises his hand to half-mast and walks forward, skirting the black strap that keeps everyone in queue. When he pulls a list from his pocket, the barista eyes it narrowly, her scent suddenly reeking of exhaustion. Niles can sympathize. "Don't worry," he reassures her. "Not only is it a long list, but it has lots of special, only 1.5 squirts, not 2, crap for you to deal with." The blonde beta behind him snickers, and Niles smirks in spite of himself. "But the best part is," Niles hands the list over, "I don't care if you spit in any of it. Except the hazelnut. That one's mine. The rest is fair game." He flashes his best grin and flips his long, black woven with blue braids over his shoulder. The woman behind the counter feigns offense. "I don't spit in things. I only sneeze." Admirable. Such restraint should be rewarded. Niles says as seriously as possible, earning chuckles from both the blonde beta and the barista this time. He's on a roll today. I'll get this together. Give me a minute. She considers the list again, grimacing. Maybe a few minutes. Niles says his thanks and pulls to the side, slipping his phone from his pocket and thumbing through the passcode, checking his texts. His best friend sent him a message this morning, complaining her feet were somehow swelling out of her shoes, and he feels a deep-seated need to harass her about it. I'll have hazelnut too, Blonde Beta says to another barista, taking his order as he hands over a rewards card and a 20. When Niles turns to face him, the beta shrugs with a smile. They don't have anything pumpkin spice, so you've got to get your flavor somewhere. The man's street cred suddenly goes up a notch in Niles's book, until he accidentally drops the cash on the floor, lunges down to get it, and baffs his head off the counter with a grunt. Niles winces on his behalf, his shoulders pulling up to his ears as he lets out a sympathetic hiss. Waving the money at the wide-eyed man behind the counter, the blonde beta manages a proper handoff this time. Face flushed, he touches his forehead with a gingerliness that silently screams, "Will that hurt?" After receiving his change with no further injury, he steps up beside Niles, smelling like sheer humiliation, woven atop something sharper. It's unlike any beta Niles has ever smelled before. Not bad, just different. Sorry you had to see that, the man mumbles, tucking his change in his pocket. Niles waves his phone absently. I saw nothing. Of what speakest thou? The beta's face blooms into a smile, while his forehead simultaneously blooms into a bruise. You're funny. And pretty, apparently. Handsome, the man corrects, holding up a finger and tisking him lightly. I hear it's better to say handsome. They share a moment of silence as Niles tries, and fails, to make his best friend laugh via speech bubbles. So, Blonde Beta says, rocking on his heels, would it be offensive if I asked you to sit down and drink your coffee with me before you go? Startled from his phone, Niles takes in the man's hopeful face and pastes a sympathetic smile on his own. I've got to get the order back to the office. Unfazed, the man tries. How about same time, same place tomorrow? The phrase, take a hint, swirls a spiral through Niles's thoughts, and his smile tightens. Sorry, I don't think so. It doesn't seem to change the man's facial expression much, except that he seems more interested. His eyes glimmer brighter, and that sharp piece of his scent raises a tick. Niles lifts his eyebrows. Is it obnoxious to say that he doesn't date betas? Not anymore, at least. Thankfully, he doesn't have to explore that train of thought because the barista calls his name, his order assembled in the most precarious way possible, and Niles uses that as an excuse to say his abrupt goodbyes, gather his caffeinated burden, and work his way back out of the shop again. So there we go. That's not entirely through the first chapter, but it's a good little amount to give you an idea. If you'd like to see more, go ahead and go on to your bookstore of choice online and see if they can give you a fuller preview. It gets you deeper into the book. Other than that, I hope you give it a shot. And if you give it a shot, I hope you love it, because I love it. I love Niles and Jason and Tristan and all the things. Bye!